Well, I have a couple of questions, but my first main question is about how to manage setbacks and stay motivated. I've had a lot of setbacks lately, and I'm getting non-motivated now. And I'm like, I know I'm going through a spiritual journey as well. It's just I'm fluffing out.
You said you feel like you okay, so I understand what you're saying. I've definitely experienced my own understandings in relation to that, and when you add the spiritual aspect into the mix, that can make it even more intense sometimes. I think the best way you said to manage it, when it comes to when it comes to getting past those type of things, I don't necessarily say that, I manage the energy, I allow it
Mhm.
in some sense. I allow myself to feel whatever comes up. And you said, how do you find motivation again, or how do you step into a sense of motivation? A lot of times for me and my experience, because I have gone through the understanding of feeling like I couldn't, how do I get back up? Or how do I feel like, because this type of stuff can make you feel drained, or just very, very
Absolutely.
much like, in some sense, really like there's no point in to continue moving forward.
Right.
And what I do is when I felt those things, it's not that I don't acknowledge them. I do. I acknowledge them. I let that energy be what it is. And to be honest, I still do my best to, separate in some sense and move through my day. And it's not in a sense of thinking or feeling like, oh, I'm happy or I'm motivated in a sense and moving forward. No, that's not the understanding necessarily. It really will often be that I'm feeling these things come up, and I just take them as understanding that this energy needs to exist in this moment to be released from me. You understand what I'm saying? I don't. I don't try to make it a optimistic understanding. To be honest, I accept that whatever's going on with my ego energy, because it's kind of, you could say, the ego versus the soul in a sense. Whatever's
Mhm.
going on in my ego understanding, that desire to have control, that desire to have things be a certain way, I accept that it needs this moment to feel how it's feeling, and I respect it. I really will sometimes have conversations with my ego self and say, "Hey, I see you. I hear you, I understand, but even in this sense, I also reminded that, this is, uh, this is in some sense us being led by something higher than ourselves, and in that also I have conversations with spirit too in relation to that. Not always nice conversations. It can be me being angry, it can be me being upset, but I allow my ego its space to feel how it feels, and I also have conversations with my creator, who it's my creator's path for me. you know it knows what it's doing, but that doesn't mean I'm always okay with it.
Right.
Sometimes I'm angry in that understanding, sometimes I'm frustrated because I don't get it, but I know for whatever reasons it may feel that maybe I don't need to know all of those things, maybe it's too heavy for me to carry all of those things. And it's even though it's uncomfortable for me to be in this state, it's my creator feels it's better for me to move in this uncomfortable energy versus having to experience this uncomfortable energy and also holding on to the burden of knowing everything as well, because knowledge can be a burden too, and that's something that I don't think is talked about enough in a sense. But yeah, so as far as trying to manage it, if I am managing it, it's really by paying attention to it and allowing it its space to be what it is, and letting myself, if I need to, again, like, feel frustrated, cry, acknowledge it, whatever the case may be, and at the same time accepting it for what it is, and not trying to turn it into a silver lining. I used to be somebody that would always try to turn everything into an optimistic understanding, but now I understand that even the shadows are gifts. Even the shadows are gifts, and so sometimes that energy is necessary, whether we want to admit it or accept that or not.
Right.
Mm. So I hope that kind of answers your question, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, it does. It gives me a different perspective, but I also have felt like how can I explain it? Almost like when I get the setbacks, that I'm a failure in something because I'm hard on
Mm.
myself. and it's not a good feeling. Like it happened to me a couple of days ago or the last couple of days. And I've been like, okay, but now what? How do I stay motivated? I just had, these
Mhm.
setbacks, you know. Then I try to look at it in another dimension and say, okay, this is a spiritual thing. And I'm going to calm down and step back because I was very angry
Mhm.
about what happened the last couple of days. And then I kind of quieted myself and said, okay, somewhat the way you explained it, let me just accept this and not try to redirect anything and move forward with it. But it's hard.
Mhm. No, it really is, and we are always our worst critics in that sense, you know?
Hmm. And
The
that's
understanding.
also, I have a dilemma of um, I'm working now at a position, but my direct report probably will be leaving. And
Mhm.
that's a lot of decision making too. Like, am I financially stable enough to leave? Or should I step out there and just, how can I say, today I got a message that said, just do it.
Mm.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Just do it. Do what? Do what? Then you have to start to weigh the options. Do what? So I'm at like the crossroads of a lot of things. Do I stay? Do I go? If she stays, do I
Mhm.
stay? If I do stay, how long will I stay? Because I
Yeah,
have a
so
cutoff for myself.
Mhm. I understand what you're saying. Sounds like a lot of crossroads energy, a lot of different timelines coming up asking you which one is best for you, which one do you want to be a part of. And it sounds also just like regardless, even if you are staying in that environment, that there's change there. You know, there's a lot of change that is coming, and even in that sense, it's going to be whatever the understanding is. Some way, somehow, it is going to be different, a different
Mhm,
environment. Whether it's you leaving that environment or staying in it, you know, with that person leaving. But
mhm.
no, that's understandable. It's a lot. It sounds like a lot.
It is a lot. Um, yeah, but it's funny because I'm ready for a change. I'm
Hmm.
ready for new energy. That's for sure. But it's like you're anticipating, and I need to quit trying to figure it out. That is the problem. Like you said, just go with the flow. But I'm like, should I? Should not? Maybe I should. Mm-mm. No, if I do this, then this may go this way, may go this way. I guess because I'm an overthinker. And speaking of not overthinking, but timelines, I have
Hmm.
been watching people that are spiritually motivated to do certain things, and they use a lot of the verbiage of different timelines.
Hmm.
Now, how do you clarify, for example, how do you know you're living on the right timeline? Or do you have a choice of what timeline you want to go?
There's a certain level of choice there, I would say.
Hmm. Because
For
I
me.
even listened to some of the just like news reports or
Mhm.
spiritual people, and they give their vision or view on certain things, and then they'll say, oh, that's another timeline, but on this time, and I'm like, okay, let's stick to this timeline because we're not on another timeline yet.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when it comes to stepping into certain spiritual awareness, you know, about certain things, you start to see and understand that everything is a timeline around you,
Hmm.
you know? However, my thing about it is that the answer to whatever you want for yourself is consistency. All managing or all really stepping into a timeline for yourself is it's about consistency in this physical body. You know, what will you consistently pour your energy into? I was talking to my brother about this earlier. If you consistently drink, you're gonna get a result. If you consistently
Hmm.
smoke, you're gonna get a result. If you consistently pour your energy a certain way, you're gonna get a result. It's just about understanding. If you understand it, stepping into a timeline as remaining consistent to one way of being, then that's it. You know, if you consistently, you know, set yourself up in a way for something, you're going to have some result, you know, and sometimes that result may be what you think it is. Sometimes it may surprise you. you know? And you could be doing certain things for a specific reason, and spirit has a whole other understanding of why you're doing this in a sense. Like I got 2 degrees in basically computers, the IT field, and in doing that, like I know a lot about computers, and I was, planning to work and get jobs in relation to that understanding. But instead, Spirit's plan was like, well, now you can run your own websites and do all of these other things, freelance with technology. And this is something that you can do, even though that wasn't the reason why I decided to do it. That wasn't my plan, So I really think that timelines, when it comes to the timelines that you have around you, is really just about thinking about what you want for yourself. And if you see a timeline that feels the most intuitively right for you, move toward it. Like that energy was telling you, just do it, even if
Mhm.
it seems scary. I mean, sometimes, especially if it seems scary,
Mhm.
because yeah, sometimes, especially if it seems scary, because that is often the thing that is what might be the most fulfilling for you. I'm not going to say all the time. It's going to be situational based in a sense. But a lot of times, the things that are the scariest understanding for us, they're the thing that has a lot to offer us, depending. We could be scared about how am I going to do this? How am I going to manage this? This is new to me. Well, then break it down. If it's an elephant, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, figuring out what's the first bite to take to eat, or what's the first step to take in a sense, and breaking it down so it's probably going to be anxious inducing or scary in some sense, but it'll be less so because you're not looking at it as this big elephant of the understanding, but a smaller version of that. So, what piece is the closest to you? What piece in
Right.
your environment can you change the easiest, in a sense? And that's how I look at timelines. I look at everything in my environment, I see it as timelines, and I understand like what is the best way for me to go about where I want to head for myself. And it's not always easy. Sometimes the timelines that I know I need to do for myself, they are tiring, or they feel like, oh, but
Right.
I also know if this is what I want, then I need to remain consistent to that. And nobody said it's easy, but like it really is the way a lot of times.
Hey, you guys, I hope you're enjoying this one on one session. If you would like to receive a session of your own or have a question you would like to ask, please check out the links in this video's description to sign up for a free one on one or submit your question.
Because right now I'm just facing, as I said, a dilemma where I don't know what I want to do. I know
Hmm.
I don't want to stay in a structured work environment anymore, but what am I going to do? I have many other talents, but I don't want to be like work,
Yeah,
because I'm at the retirement age. I want to be something I want to do and not have to do.
I understand. That's something that just feels emotionally fulfilling, and since you do it from a place
Right.
of just really just a place of soul joy or soul peace in some sense.
Right. And I know it's the energy is pushing me towards dealing with people more,
Hmm.
as far as helping them. And even when I look at, sometimes I evaluate myself with my own readings or something like that. And it always pushes me towards helping others, counseling other, passing the knowledge constantly, teaching, passing knowledge. And I'm good at that on the other hand. Of course, my profession is legal attorney, but um, even with that, with the particular law I practice, you had to put a lot of emotion in it, but
Hmm.
not. It was a little different because we're talking about medical malpractice and insurance defense. To the
Hmm.
point, I think one of the worst cases I had, worst scenario was a woman that was pregnant and she had her baby, and they gave her too much potassium for her delivery, and the baby literally came out burned.
Hmm.
And it was like, okay, how do we do this? How do we, you know, treat her a certain way, guide her a certain way. And all that stress is gone now because I'm out of that field. But now I'm working with what youth.
Hmm.
trying to help them find a direction.
Yeah.
So
I
it's challenging. Yeah. That's why I say it's challenging for me to I want to leave where I'm at, but we do work with youth. We have a heavy, strong summer program.
Mhm,
Even though I'm actually the compliance person, director in that program, it always turns opposite on me and I become a counselor, a go-to person, with the youth, which I love
mhm,
and I don't mind, but that's not actually my job description.
mm,
And if I was to leave there, I would want to go into something like dealing one-on-one with uh, kids like foster care or it's just so
mhm.
much missing now with the youth. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Well,
again, like I said, it's a dilemma that I have to figure out and move forward in that. But on the other hand, what do you think, or how do you think I can prioritize, I guess, what I need to do to prepare myself to, I guess, leave where I am?
I mean, as far as a lot of the change that I've made for myself, I've always been a list maker. That's something that's helped me break it down, even as far as I actually have a name for it. I don't just call them lists, I call them schematics. So
Okay.
it's really almost, I write them almost down as a story in a sense, and you could say that I've lived by that story, lived or walked the schematic that I would write out in a sense. So it really is kind of like a roadmap for me. That's kind of like what I do
Now,
or
see, I do that far as work.
mm-hmm,
I'm notorious for, I call it my mapping. I'm
mm-hmm,
good at mapping for work, but I haven't done it for myself.
yeah.
So I guess I have to put that pen to that paper and figure it out.
Mm. It's something, I mean, because I will say that, did I start doing it in relation to work? I honestly think I've just been doing it my whole life.
Really? Mine's
From a
always
very
been work.
young age.
Maybe because it's legal and you do need to
Mhm,
have a lot of documentation, a lot of correspondence, we have a lot of deadlines. You can't
mhm,
miss those. So I think that's where it came from. So that's probably why I don't do it for myself. Like it's mostly in my head. Okay, this is what I'm going to do.
mhm.
Okay, next.
I will say when I'm doing it in relation, because again, for business stuff, to some extent, I do to some extent add timelines or deadlines into it if it's really important. But when I do it for myself, it's usually just about, let's say I want to make this move. I don't really heavily put deadlines in there because there's a lot that can come with that.
Hmm.
Anxiety and just a little bit of extra. I mean, if you feel like that's what you need to do, especially if maybe you're wanting to do something that needs to be done by a certain time, you know.
Right.
However, when with my life itself, I often live by divine timing. And when you understand or live by divine timing, that's living on God's timing when it wants you to do things. There are things that I've planned to do, and Spirit was like, "Oh, nope, sooner."
Hmm.
A lot sooner than you think, Samantha. And I'm like, okay. And sometimes it's been like, not just yet, maybe a little bit longer than you think when I've wanted it to be sooner.
Excuse
So,
me. Hmm.
bless you. But yeah, like
Thank you.
so I really have in the back in the day, I did have more of like I want it to be done by this and that time frame and everything else. But now I do that a lot less unless it's really necessary. Like I have to do this because this is the deadline for something. But for the most part, I find it really hard to do that. At least with my personal understandings, because spirit is always, I'm thinking it's one thing, and spirit will be like, nope, it's completely something else. As far as the timing aspect of it. So I really just have learned to accept, if I'm planning this understanding of this understanding feels intuitively right, I will trust the energy understanding of when I should do it. Even if, sometimes it may make me feel anxiety because it feels too soon, or it's frustrating because it feels too long. But often it's, especially recently, it's felt too soon. you know it's felt like, oh my God, do this. And I'm like, this is too much. It takes a lot.
Right. I
But
think that's the operative word for me right now is trust.
mm,
Trust. Like I do trust, but then it's like, you know how spirit will tell you one thing and it's true, and you're like, but it's taking too long. So what's wrong? Or am I doing the wrong thing?
mm,
Or did I do something wrong? And
yeah.
you start to wibble wobble like, oh, well, maybe I need to do something else. That's scary. So, how do you really forgive someone and not hold that grudge against them? I say that secret grudge.
I There was a time in my life where I thought that I was forgiving people by not talking about it anymore, and that was it.
Mm,
And then, in the past, uh, I spoke to a therapist, and I was saying, like, just talking about a lot of the things that I experienced, betrayals I'd experienced, the ways in which I felt wronged me in some sense, and I was saying to that person that like but I did forgive them. She was saying basically that I hadn't forgiven those people, and I said, I have though. She was like, how can you if you've never been taught how to forgive? And I don't think that that's always true. I think that you can learn or, in some sense, understand how to truly forgive people without it being taught outside of you in some sense. Some people may really have that aspect within themselves. I thought that I was forgiving, but really what I was doing was holding on and suppressing the things. And I think that the best way, in my experience now, from what I understand now, the experience of forgiving, it's not necessarily of like, oh, I'm expecting us to be, or my energy or my emotion, or that I would ever look at you and you again. Forgiveness and trust are two different things. I could forgive you, and
right.
I think that helps too in some sense. Me understanding that forgiveness and releasing the emotions of the experience that you may have had with this person, it's not the same thing as saying that I'm going to allow you back into my life, or I'm going to allow you to be, in a sense, allow you into vulnerable spaces with me easily. Forgiveness just means that I accept that who you were in this understanding, you did these things, and I'm letting it go. I'm releasing it from me. I am over it for myself, and I'm not
Hmm.
angry about it anymore. I've acknowledged that. I'm not running away from it. I'm not just, not bringing it up. I've spoken about it, whether it's to the person or whether it's me acknowledging it with myself, because a lot of times when people hurt you or you feel in some way betrayed, I think that we also feel angry or mad at ourselves in some sense. And I think some of that understanding of forgiveness is also about forgiving yourself for allowing, you know? And so just having that conversation with yourself, and again, sometimes with the person, but I mostly have tried to make it about myself, because I never want it to be the understanding of I need it to be this person outside of me, um, giving me this closure in a sense, because that never really works. Especially if in the world that we live in, we don't really have a world of people taking accountability for their actions. So if you are waiting on accountability, you could be waiting a long, long time. And I've had somebody not admit that they've done something to me and say to me, I'm sorry for what you think I've done. You know, and I've had some people try to gaslight me in the understanding of, hey, you didn't see what I was doing, or like this didn't happen that way, or just really completely try to change the truth of what happened in a sense. So in order
Change
not to
it.
deal with all of that, I think it's really important to kind of like make it about yourself in that sense, forgiving yourself. Yes, you can, it's about forgiving that person or getting past the anger of it, and also having conversations about it out loud if you can to the person, but out loud even to yourself, and acknowledging it. Cry it out, be angry about it, whatever the case may be. But don't think that it has to be with this person itself. You can have these conversations to an empty room. You can have this anger to an empty room, and it can give you a similar result to some extent, and I'm not saying that's going to work for everybody. Some people, they really, they want it to be that understanding of that other person. But then they get that moment and then they still feel angry because that person didn't acknowledge it, or they feel like that person didn't feel that pain of everything. And a lot of times it's not that the person didn't, people can be very good at wearing masks. You
Mhm.
want them to be vulnerable and showcase everything, all the hurt that they may feel by you saying certain things to them. But they're not necessarily you. And
Right.
so I really think it can be important to make forgiveness about yourself in that sense, and understanding that a part of you may be hurt or angry with yourself because you did not necessarily protect yourself, or you weren't aware enough, or you feel like you missed something when you could have had, if you had protected yourself better, then that person wouldn't have been allowed in a sense. And it again, people, they wear masks and they can be tricky and sneaky, and so it's not necessarily that that's the case, but that doesn't mean that your ego understanding may not feel that way. Just like
Right.
earlier when you were talking about feeling that you failed, or some sense you can feel that way when you feel that somebody's hurt you or betrayed, like you failed yourself because you didn't see it you know so I
Mhm.
think, if you can, the best way to forgive and move forward is to make it about forgiving yourself. Make it the understanding of, even if it's you going into the mirror and saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better. I'm sorry, but we see now, we understand now, whatever the case may be. Having those conversations with yourself can really help and assist. They're very important. And yeah, and the other thing is, again, like I said before, make it about the understanding of me releasing these emotions, this anger that I had towards you doesn't mean that I'm about to allow you back into my life. And some people can, the person that may have been wrong in the situation, they may think that, okay, well, you don't forgive me because you're not allowing me back in. But forgiveness is not trust. Forgiveness just means I forgive you,
Right.
and understand that. And
Right.
I that's something that I had to learn too. That it's not about saying I allow you into my space, or you into any understanding of connecting with me. No, I'm just moving forward and letting that go. But that doesn't mean that I didn't see you for what you were. I'm just letting it go and moving forward.
Right. Uh,
You still what you are.
exactly. But I think with me as well is I forgive you, but I do not forget. No,
Yeah.
I do not forget. So sometimes I struggle with that. Like, okay, I forgave you, but again,
Yeah.
as you said, do I
Well, I
trust you?
think
No.
I think it becomes more, whether or not you forget, you're not, it's not really the understanding of forgetting. Like you said, you do not forget. But also at the same time, I think that matters the most if you're planning to have that person be a part of your life, because a lot of times, nobody's perfect, so it's not that you're not going to
Right.
have any experiences with that person that may hurt you, or may make you feel in some way that they didn't show up in a way that you would have liked them to. But with that being the case, it's really just the understanding of, if you want them to be a part of your life, that understanding of forgetting, I think or again, you're not going to forget. It's been done. It's about accepting that that happened, but at the same time, moving past it, acknowledging it for what it is, and letting it go in a sense. If you can't, in a sense, of course, it's about this person like earning that understanding from you in a sense. Maybe, and this isn't something that they have to do, but if they want to be a part of your life, then they kind of have to. They have to earn the trust or earn that understanding. And if they're willing to, then you have to be honest with yourself about, are you willing to accept that they have done enough, or they've consistently been trying to show up and take that action. And it may take some time, and you may have to have that conversation with them, like, hey, this is not going to just be an easy understanding of, a few weeks ago you did this thing and we're back chummy and friendly and everything. But overall, it could take months, and I can't promise you anything, but it could take years. I can't promise you that I'm going to be over this, but I do want us to try to work past and grow past and continue to be a part of each other's life, and sometimes you also might have to accept too that even when you tried, that it's not going to work out in some sense. I think that it's really about understanding that just because you want this person to be a part of your life after everything, your soul may feel differently, but pertaining to what you've been shown.
Absolutely.
If you really want to,
Mhm.
try, but at the end of the day, if it's not going to work, you know accept that that's okay, and accept too that maybe it could be that you need space, like true space, where you don't see this person or talk to this person for a long time, and then maybe, months from now or years from now when you see them, it feels differently. It feels like that thing that happened was insignificant. It feels like nothing, like just a piece of paper that's floating in the wind. But it could take time, like true space and time, for that to
Mhm.
happen, where you have separation and you can have all the good moments and the other understandings that were bigger float up and remind you of
Right.
all that they were beyond that one thing.
Mhm. You're right.